The man who bought the company promised change, but the first thing he did was fire the only black woman in the room. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We want to know how far this story travels. Diane Thompson had given 23 years to Harrington and Klein. 23 years of arriving before sunrise, leaving after dark, fixing mistakes that carried other people's names, and building strategies that saved millions while earning praise for men who simply nodded in meetings. She was 52 years old, a mother, a homeowner, a woman who believed that excellence could break through any ceiling. But Harrington and Klein wasn't the kind of place where ceilings broke. It was the kind of place where they just kept building new ones. The firm sat in downtown Boston, all marble and mahogany, with oil paintings of dead white men lining the hallways like patron saints. The partners wore cufflinks passed down through generations. Their secretaries knew their coffee orders by heart. The air itself seemed to smell like old money and older promises. And Diane? She was the woman they called when something needed saving. The analyst who turned chaos into clarity. The strategist who saw solutions before problems even had names. The mentor who trained every junior hire, even the ones who'd leapfrogged her within 2 years. She remembered each one of them. Kevin, who she'd taught financial modeling to, now a senior partner at 34. Brad, who couldn't spell accrual when he started, now leading the West Coast office. Jennifer, who cried in Diane's office every Friday for 6 months until she found her confidence, now making triple Diane's salary. They all sent her Christmas cards. They all called her when they needed advice, but none of them ever asked why she was still sitting in the same cubicle after 2 decades. When the annual reviews came around, her manager Richard, a man with soft hands and a softer spine, would lean back in his chair and say the same thing every time. "Diane, you're solid, really solid. But leadership? I don't know. You're just not quite there yet." She knew what "not quite there" meant. It meant her voice was too quiet in meetings. Until she spoke up, then it was too loud. It meant her ideas were interesting. Until a white colleague repeated them 10 minutes later, then they were brilliant. It meant she was reliable, dependable, essential, but never extraordinary. Because extraordinary required something she'd never have. The right last name, the right connections, the right skin. She stayed anyway, because her daughter Maya was finishing grad school at Columbia, because the mortgage didn't care about dignity, because the health insurance was good and her mother needed those prescription medications, because walking away felt like surrender. So Diane made herself smaller. She stopped offering ideas in meetings, stopped expecting recognition, stopped hoping. She became a ghost in a building full of people who looked right through her. She'd stand in the elevator with partners who'd ask her to hold the door, then continue their conversation as if she were invisible. She'd present in conference rooms where men checked their phones while she spoke, then praise each other for great points 5 minutes later. She watched younger, whiter, less qualified people get corner offices while she got a desk near the copy machine. And every night she'd drive home on the Mass Pike, hands tight on the steering wheel, telling herself, just a few more years, just until Maya graduates, just until the mortgage is paid, just until, but just until, never came. Until the day they decided even shadows took up too much space. It was a Tuesday in March when everything changed. The morning had started normal. Bagels in the break room, coffee from the corner shop, the low hum of keyboards and conference calls. Diane was reviewing a client portfolio, a pharmaceutical company she'd been working with for 8 years, when her phone buzzed. "Richard, can you come by my office?" She saved her work, grabbed her notebook. She always brought a notebook to meetings, a habit from the days when she still believed her ideas mattered, and walked down the hall. past the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, where sailboats dotted the water like scattered thoughts, past the framed photos of company milestones she'd helped create but never appeared in, past the conference room where she'd once presented a strategy that saved a client $12 million, only to watch Richard take credit in the follow-up meeting. Richard's door was half open. She knocked anyway. Come in," he said, not looking up from his computer. She sat down in the chair across from his desk, a chair she'd sat in dozens of times before, for performance reviews that went nowhere, and conversations that led to nothing. Richard closed his laptop, shuffled some papers, cleared his throat. He still wasn't looking at her. That should have been the first sign. "Diane? Thanks for coming." His hands moved across the papers on his desk, like he was reading them, but his eyes weren't tracking. "Listen, the firm's going through some restructuring. New ownership, new vision. You probably heard about the acquisition." She nodded. Everyone had heard. 3 months ago, the founding partners had sold Harrington & Klein to Meridian Capital Group, a private equity firm known for optimizing companies, which usually meant firing people and cutting costs. Right, so Meridian wants to streamline operations, bring in younger talent, fresh energy, new perspectives. Richard's voice got quieter with each phrase, like he was trying to disappear into his own words. "It's nothing personal. It's just the direction we're heading." The office suddenly felt too small, too cold. Diane's hands, folded in her lap, started to tingle. "You're letting me go," she said quietly. Richard nodded, and relief washed over him like she'd just done him a favor by saying it out loud so he didn't have to. "We'll give you a severance package, of course, 3 months' salary, and we'll write you a strong recommendation letter. I'll personally make sure it highlights all your contributions." 3 months. For 23 years. Diane sat very still. She thought about the pharmaceutical client, the retail chain she'd saved from bankruptcy, the tech startup she'd helped scale, the hundreds of reports with her name buried in the footnotes, the thousands of hours she'd given to a place that never gave anything back. "When?" she asked. "End of the week. We'll help you pack up on Friday." "And, Diane," Richard finally met her eyes, "thank you for everything. You've been a real asset to this company." Asset. Like a desk, like a filing cabinet, like something you inventory and discard when you upgrade. She stood up. "I'll start clearing my desk." "You don't have to do it today." "I know." She walked out without looking back. Diane didn't cry. Not in the hallway, not in the elevator that smelled like someone's expensive cologne. Not when she returned to her desk and saw the photo of Maya in her graduation cap, smiling like the world was full of possibility. She opened the cardboard box that was already sitting beside her desk. They'd even prepared it in advance, she realized, and started packing. 23 years fit into one box. A few framed photos, a coffee mug Maya had made in middle school that said "World's Best Mom" in crooked letters, a small succulent plant that had somehow survived on fluorescent light and neglect, files and folders she'd probably never need again. Her colleagues walked past. Some glanced over. Most pretended not to notice. Jennifer, the one she'd mentored through her crying Fridays, paused at the corner, opened her mouth like she was going to say something, then kept walking. No one asked what was happening. They already knew.
And they'd already decided it was safer to pretend they didn't. Diane held it together until she reached her car in the parking garage. Then the dam broke. She sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, and sobbed. Deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place she'd kept locked for decades. The kind of crying that makes your chest hurt and your throat raw. The kind that empties you out until there's nothing left but the echo of everything you tried so hard to hold in. All those years. All that work, all that quiet endurance, all the time she'd smiled when she wanted to scream, all the time she'd nodded when she wanted to walk out, all the time she'd made herself smaller so they'd feel bigger, and they erased her, like she'd never existed, like she'd never mattered, like she was always meant to disappear. That night, Diane sat at her kitchen table, staring at the severance paperwork. The house was too quiet. Maya was back in New York. The walls seemed to press in. Her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but she saw Maya's name on the screen and picked up. "Mom? You okay? You sound weird." Diane tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "Mom?" "They let me go, baby." Silence on the other end. Long enough that Diane wondered if the call had dropped. Then, softly, "After 23 years?" "After 23 years." Maya's voice changed, sharpened. What did they say? What reason did they give? Restructuring, new direction, younger talent, the usual. "That's bullshit, Mom." Maya's voice cracked with anger. You've been carrying that place for years. You trained half those people. You saved their biggest clients. They can't just... "They can, baby." And they did. Maya went quiet again. Then, "You know what? Screw them. You're brilliant. You've been brilliant this whole time, and they were too stupid to see it. Now you get to do something for yourself." Diane wanted to believe her, but all she felt was empty, like someone had reached inside her chest and removed something essential, leaving just a hollow space where purpose used to be. "I'm too old to start over," Diane whispered. "You're 52, not 92. I'm 52 with no title, no connections, and a gap in my employment history. You have 23 years of experience and a list of clients who love you. They love Harrington and Klein. Not me." "Mom," Maya's voice softened. "Do you really believe that?" Diane didn't answer, because she didn't know what she believed anymore. The weeks that followed were gray, not in a poetic way, just gray, like someone had turned down the saturation on the world. Diane applied to other consulting firms, McKinsey, Bain, Deloitte, even smaller boutique companies. She sent out resumes with carefully crafted cover letters. She reached out to old contacts on LinkedIn with messages that tried to sound casual but came across desperate. The responses were polite rejections or cold silence. "Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates. Your experience is impressive, but we're looking for someone with a more recent leadership track record. We'll keep your resume on file," which everyone knows means we've already deleted it. She started sleeping past noon, then past 2. Then she stopped keeping track of time altogether. She'd wake up in the afternoon, check her email for responses that never came, then spend hours scrolling through industry news. Forbes articles about 30 under 30 consultants changing the world. LinkedIn posts from former colleagues getting promoted, celebrating wins, sharing photos from company retreats in Napa. None of them looked like her. She'd close her laptop feeling more invisible than ever. One evening in early May, Diane came home unannounced. She used her key. Diane had insisted she keep one even after moving to New York, and found her mother sitting in the living room in the dark, laptop open, staring at nothing. The TV was off. No music, just silence and the blue glow of the screen. "Mom!" Diane looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten other people existed. Maya set down her bag and sat beside her on the couch. "You can't do this to yourself." "Do what?" "Disappear." Diane's eyes filled with tears again. Always again. "I already did, baby. 23 years, and I was never really there." Maya took her mother's hands. They were cold. "You were there. They just refused to see you. That's not the same thing. It feels the same." "It's not." Maya squeezed her hands. "And you know what? You don't need them to see you. You just need to see yourself." Diane let out a bitter laugh. "That's easier said than done when the world keeps telling you you're invisible. Then don't let them be right. Don't let them erase you." That night, Diane sat at her kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. The same notebook she used to take to meetings where no one listened. She wrote one question at the top of the page. What do I actually know? Then she started writing. Client relations, financial modeling, strategic planning, crisis management, negotiation, risk assessment, operational efficiency, change management, stakeholder communication, revenue optimization. The list went on for 3 pages. She stared at it. 23 years of expertise, decades of relationships, knowledge that couldn't be taught in an MBA program, experience that only comes from doing the work, not just talking about it. And she'd been giving it all away for free, to people who didn't value it, to a company that saw her as disposable. But what if she didn't give it away anymore? What if she sold it on her own terms? Diane spent the next month doing something she'd never done before. She reached out directly to clients. Not Harrington and Klein's clients, her clients. the ones she'd saved, the ones she'd worked with for years, the ones who knew her name and her cell phone number because she'd answered their calls at midnight when crises struck. She kept the emails simple. "Hey Tom, I hope you're well. I've recently transitioned out of Harrington and Klein and am exploring independent consulting opportunities. If you ever need strategic support, I'd love to reconnect. Best, Diane." She hit send on the first one and immediately wanted to delete it. What if they ignore me? What if they think I'm unprofessional? What if... Her phone rang. Tom Chen, CEO of the pharmaceutical company she'd worked with for 8 years. "Diane, finally! I was wondering what the hell happened to you. You just disappeared. They let me go." "They what?" Tom sounded genuinely angry. "Are you kidding me? You're the only reason we didn't tank during the FDA crisis. You're the only one who actually understood our business. I appreciate that, Tom. Listen, forget them. When can you start? We've got a supply chain issue that's about to blow up, and the new consultant they sent us is useless. Name your rate." Diane sat very still, phone pressed to her ear, unable to believe what she was hearing. "I'll pay you double what Harrington and Klein charged, and I'll send a retainer agreement today. You in?" She took a breath. "I'm in."
The responses came faster than she expected. Within 2 days, she had 5 interested clients. Within 2 weeks, she had 8 signed contracts. Within 6 weeks, she was making more than she'd made in her last year at Harrington and Klein and working half the hours. She set up a home office in her spare bedroom, bought a good chair and a second monitor, created a simple website with Maya's help. Diane Thompson Consulting, strategic solutions that work. Nothing fancy. No marble lobbies or oil paintings, just her name, her expertise, and her phone number. And it was enough. More than enough. Her clients didn't care that she worked from a spare bedroom in Brookline. They didn't care that she didn't have a corporate address or a receptionist. They cared that she answered when they called. They cared that she knew their businesses inside and out. They cared that she delivered results. And slowly, quietly, Diane started building something she'd never had before, her own name, not attached to a firm, not buried in someone else's success story, just hers. The first year was hard. Diane worked from her dining room table, taking calls at all hours, learning how to run a business while also being the business. She made mistakes. She undercharged some clients and overcommitted to others. She cried in frustration more times than she wanted to admit, but she didn't quit. By the end of year 1, she had 12 retainer clients and had hired her first employee, a young woman named Shanice, who reminded Diane of herself 20 years ago. Smart, hungry, invisible to the firms that only hired from Ivy League schools. "I want to build something different," Diane told her on her first day. "A place where your work matters more than your zip code." Shanice smiled. "I'm in." 2 years later, Diane Thompson Consulting had 15 employees and an office in downtown Boston. Smaller than Harrington and Klein's, but newer, brighter, with floor-to-ceiling windows and art by local black artists on the walls. 5 years later, she had offices in Boston, New York, and Atlanta, with 63 employees and a client list that included Fortune 500 companies. 7 years later, she was being profiled in Forbes as one of the most innovative strategists in the industry, with a photo of her standing in her corner office, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera, with the kind of confidence that only comes from building something real. The article called her a disruptor in an industry that desperately needs disruption. But the most important moment, the moment Diane would remember for the rest of her life, came on a cold morning in November, 7.5 years after she'd been erased. She was in her corner office, reviewing a proposal, when her assistant knocked. "Miss Thompson, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." Diane looked up. "Who is it?" "Richard Palmer, from Harrington and Klein." The room went very still. Diane's heart stopped, then started again slower, steadier. She took a breath. "Send him in." Richard walked in looking smaller than she remembered, older, grayer, like the years hadn't been kind. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes darting around the office, the modern furniture, the art,
The view of the harbor, the photo of Maya on the desk. Diane, wow, this is incredible. She didn't stand, didn't smile, just gestured to the chair across from her desk. What can I do for you, Richard? He sat down slowly, like he wasn't sure he deserved to be. I'll get straight to it. H&K's in trouble. Bad trouble. He rubbed his face. The restructuring didn't go as planned. Meridian stripped us down, cut our best people, and now clients are leaving in droves. Revenue's down 60%. We've lost half our staff, and the board, they're looking to sell what's left. Diane said nothing. I know this is awkward, Richard continued, his voice getting quieter. I know I don't deserve to be here asking you for anything, but I remembered how good you were, how much the clients trusted you, and I thought maybe you'd be interested in coming back as a partner this time. Real equity, your name on the door, whatever you want. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut. Diane leaned back in her chair, studying him. This man who'd looked through her for years, who told her she wasn't leadership material, who'd fired her with a weak apology, now sitting in her office asking her to save him. You fired me, Richard. I know, and you told me I wasn't good enough. You erased 23 years of my life like it meant nothing. Richard looked at the floor. I was wrong. I was so wrong, Diane. And I'm sorry. I should have fought for you. I should have... Yes, you should have. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city below. The same harbor she used to see from Harrington and Klein's windows, but from a different angle now. I'm not interested in coming back. Richard's face fell. Diane, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but the people still there, they need you. The company needs you. She turned to face him. But I am interested in buying it. Richard's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You, what? Harrington and Klein is for sale, isn't it? I'd like to make an offer. Diane, the board would never, it's a multi-million-dollar. I'll pay cash, I'll keep the current staff, and I'll honor existing client contracts. And the offer expires in 72 hours. Richard stared at her like she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. I'll have my lawyers send over the paperwork this afternoon. You can show yourself out. 60 hours later, the deal closed. Diane Thompson became the majority owner of Harrington and Klein. She walked through those marble hallways one more time, past the oil paintings of dead white men, past the conference room where she'd once been invisible, past the cubicle where she'd spent 23 years waiting to be seen, and into the corner office that had belonged to men with inherited names and inherited power. She didn't change the furniture, didn't replace the art. She just sat down at the desk, opened her laptop, and got to work. 3 months after the acquisition, Diane stood in front of the entire staff, what was left of it, for an all-hands meeting. Some faces were familiar, some were new. All of them were watching her carefully, wondering what kind of leader she'd be, wondering if she'd seek revenge. I'm not here to punish anyone, she began, her voice steady. I'm not here for revenge. She paused, letting that sink in. I'm here because I know what it's like to be invisible in a place that should see you. I know what it's like to give everything you have and be told it's not enough. And I'm here to make sure that never happens to anyone again. Not under my watch. The room was silent. So here's what's changing. Starting today, promotions will be based on merit, not proximity to power. Pay will be transparent. And anyone who feels unseen or unheard has a direct line to me. My door is always open. She looked around the room, her eyes landing on a young black woman in the back row, an analyst, maybe 25, sitting with her notebook open, taking notes like Diane used to do, like her ideas might actually matter. This company almost died because it refused to see its own people, because it valued pedigree over performance, because it built ceilings instead of breaking them. We're going to do something different now, something better. She paused. Questions? No one spoke. Then slowly, the young woman in the back row raised her hand.
"Miss Thompson, thank you." Diane smiled, a real smile, the kind she hadn't felt in years. "Thank you for staying."
Years later, when reporters asked Diane about her journey from fired employee to Forbes featured CEO, she'd always say the same thing. "They didn't break me. They just showed me I was building in the wrong place." And when they asked if she ever felt like she got revenge, she'd shake her head. "Revenge implies I was trying to hurt them. I wasn't. I was just trying to build something they said I couldn't." She'd pause, a small smile playing on her lips. The fact that it hurt them, that was just a bonus. The woman they erased became the woman they couldn't ignore. And the doors that once closed on her now opened with her name carved above them. Not as a guest, not as an employee, as the owner. And every morning when she walked through those marble hallways, past those oil paintings, into that corner office, she'd think about the young black woman sitting in the back row of that meeting, and she'd remember why she did this. Not for revenge, for redemption. For every person who'd ever been told they weren't enough. For every shadow who'd been forced to shrink. For every name that had been erased. She was writing them all back in, one promotion at a time, one opportunity at a time, one door at a time, until nobody had to be invisible anymore.